to Let's Meet the Virologists, a podcast about the people behind today's virology headlines, people like you working to understand viruses and how they affect you. Following up on our podcast interviews of students and postdocs before the annual American Society for Virology meeting, we are talking with additional virologists who are ASV members so that you can learn who they are and what they do. I am Larissa Thackeray, and I am hosting this podcast from America's Heartland in St. Louis, Missouri. On August 12th, 2021, we talked with Nandita Kedia, a graduate student in the Mondal Lab at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, who has been investigating host factors that impact influenza virus as part of her thesis project, as well as developing a rapid point-of-care detection kit for SARS-CoV-2 called CoviRap. Nandita obtained her MS in biochemistry from the University of Calcutta before joining her PhD program and is interested in pursuing a virology postdoc in academia. Thanks for talking with us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So this is Nandita Kedia. I am a PhD student working under the guidance of Dr. Arindam Mandal in School of Bioscience, IIT Kharagpur. I have joined here in July 2017. I worked on influenza B virus, and I basically study host pathogen interaction of influenza B with the host.
Okay, great. And I guess let me just tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm an associate professor at WashU in St. Louis, Missouri. And I actually study not so much influenza virus, a little bit of coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 now, but also host pathogen interactions. But mainly it's been in the past with like flaviviruses, actually like West Nile, dengue, things like that. And the microbiome, that's sort of my interest. It's sort of like how the microbiome influences host pathogen interactions. But why don't you tell us a little bit about sort of when you were younger, how did you first become interested in just studying science at all? What sort of like got you on that path?
So it would be a little bit funny to explain in that way, but to me it happened in that way only. In the evening, my father used to sit in front of my house to relax a bit, and he used to take a chair, and I used to take a chair in front of him, and we both used to talk for hours and hours, and the talk was basically, it used to be my whole lot of questions. So if I remember now, I used to be asking him questions after questions, and he used to answer. So some of the questions that I remember is like, I used to ask like how these trees grow up, what do they get from the, like, so there is a big tree in front of my house which is really big, and it has hosted a lot of other trees above it. So I used to ask him questions regarding whatever I used to see, and thanks to him, he is also interested in studying a lot. So he has a wide variety of knowledge in every field. So he used to answer me in terms of science. So he used to answer me all about nitrogen fixation, all about humification, soils, erosion, everything. So I think that was the first seed I got from him, that, okay, the simple questions which I am asking him, there are so interesting answers to them. So I think it has started from there. So I would like to thank him for that.
And then I sort of remember when I was younger, like I had, I think, these grand ideas of being a cardiologist or something like that based on a book that I had read. And then obviously sort of my path changed as I kind of went along. When I was actually in my undergrad institution, I didn't even realize being a virologist was like a real job. Like I had never really read about sort of someone who actually does virology. So can you describe a little to us sort of how you followed the path that you followed? So how did you get into your undergrad institution, and then how did you sort of get to the lab that you're in currently?
I was quite sure that I want to study science, and when I was in my class 12, I got interested in biology a lot. So in my undergraduate, I took a course which is zoology, and I didn't like it much because it deals with a lot of big animals. So I was not very much interested in doing dissections, and also I was just looking in for the subject I will be more interested in. So I chose biochemistry for my master's, and which I liked a lot. So I got to understand what are my area of interest. And after that, when I was reading about, I was basically looking for something which will lead me towards studying genome. So the influenza viruses which we work with, it has segmented genome nature, and it has a lot of things to do with, ATGC. So ATGC had been my interest, I would say. And when I was in masters, I used to read papers, and also before joining PhD, I just read a couple of papers about influenza, and the system as a whole attracted me a lot. Like how this segmented viruses get into a cell, they get disassemble completely, and they bud out as an individual from all those small pieces. So this system as a whole attracted me a lot, and I got interested in my masters. Viruses always fascinated me in a way that being such a small entity, it can do a lot. It can do actually a lot.
And how did you sort of, so in the United States, when you sort of go to a PhD, you often get kind of accepted into a program, and then you do, I guess it's like rotations in a couple of labs, and that's how you choose your lab. But how does it work where you are? So how did you actually end up in your lab?
In our country, there are different institutions which follow various different paths. And in some of the institutions, there is a rotation system. The institution where I have joined, we were given some preference sheet at the time of entrance exam here and interview, and I have given my preferences. So it was in a way that if I get my first preference, I'm going to join here. Otherwise, it's up to me whether I would like to join or not, but I will be told the lab I am assigned to. So this is not a rotation based system here.
And then can you describe a little bit sort of what your lab is like?
Yeah, so my PI have joined the institution in 2016. He is a postdoc from UW Madison. And yeah, he has worked with Dr. Andrew Mehle. Just after his joining, maybe after 7-8 months, I have joined. I am kind of his second PhD student. We are now 5 PhD students and 1 postdoc, and 1 MSc student under him.
And can you tell us a little bit sort of in your lab, how is mentoring done?
So in my lab, I think there is a gradient which changes from the time where you're in first year versus you get older. So yeah, initially it's kind of okay. It's very much managed in terms of, okay, you do this, and it's very much training based, and hands-on practices are taught. And once you start getting older, things are given to you with an expectation that you'll be able to handle it of yourself.
So can you tell us a little bit then about this sort of your thesis work on influenza B, and then maybe talk a little bit about influenza B in general. So people are a lot more familiar with influenza A, but there's always influenza B sort of in the background. So maybe talk a little bit more about that virus, and then your thesis work in particular.
So yeah, influenza A is more known because it has the ability to cause pandemics, and influenza B has not yet caused any pandemic, though it causes epidemics, like seasonal epidemics in a local area. And it's basically more towards children. So it has been seen that it affects mostly children. But the thing is, biology wise, it's very much similar. Both the viruses have 8 segments in it. And influenza B have certain unique proteins, which is there for especially for influenza B only, and some of the proteins are there in influenza A but not B. So a little bit differences are there in terms of pathology. I would say, yeah, influenza A has been proven to be more deadly for the fact that it can cause the pandemic. But yeah, in recent couple of years, influenza B infection have increased significantly, and that is the reason the trivalent vaccines have been actually converted into quadrivalent vaccines. So initially it used to be 2 strains of influenza A, and now as the influenza B infections itself are increasing so much, there has been 2 influenza B strains included in the vaccines now. That itself suggests that it's a global concern now. And my thesis is basically on finding out some host pathogen interaction. So my work is to find out a host factor which influences influenza B RNP in either in positive or negative manner. So I'm working on a protein which is associated with influenza B RNPs in the course of infection and how it affects the RNP functioning.
And when you say RNPs, can you let sort of our listeners know what is an RNP?
So that is basically the transcription replication machinery of the virus, which lies at the core of the virus life cycle and which takes care of very important stuff of the virus life cycle.
Right. And can you tell us a little bit about what kind of experiments are these? Are you doing tissue culture, or for RNP, you could obviously do even like test tube assays, right, for transcriptional functions. So can you describe some of the types of experiments that you're doing?
So yeah, we mostly do tissue culture. Most of our experiments are based on tissue culture. So we do infections and we purify RNPs with the tags that the viruses has on it, or we transfect some of the components of the virus and we perform immunoprecipitation experiments. There is a very specific assay for influenza virus, which is RNP reporter assay, which is like polymerase activity assay. So yeah, in my first year, I have developed a system for influenza B reporter activity assay, and I'm using that to see the host factor and its effect on the polymerase activity assay.
Can you just let us know, so when you talk about a host factor, how was that host factor first identified?
So it's basically either we could have done the mass spectroscopy, or for us, we have searched literature and we have taken help of the available literature to find out which one would we like to investigate in detail.
I see. And then can you tell us a little bit about some of your findings then?
So we have got a host factor, which we found that it affects the influenza virus polymerase activity. And very interestingly, we are seeing that it shows dual kind of effect on the influenza virus life cycle. It sometimes shows the proviral activity and it sometimes shows the antiviral activity. So we know for sure that it has some inhibitory effect on the influenza virus life cycle, influenza virus polymerase activity, but we have to dissect it at each step of the virus life cycle so that we can get to understand, is it pro-viral or antiviral for the virus as a whole. So yeah, we are still working on the dissecting individual steps of the virus life cycle to find out that. And during the last pandemic, we have worked a bit about coronaviruses. So looking at the scarcity of the detection system, we have been developing a detection system which can be implemented in a rural setting in my own country, in India, and as well as all across the globe wherever it is required. So we have named it as COVI-RAP.
Can you just tell us a little bit about like how you first got into that, and then some of the findings that you were describing?
Yeah, so last year for the coronavirus pandemic, we just realized that if we can add up something in terms of the detection system, that will be helpful. So what we figured out is that it's basically either the nucleic acid detection system or the antigen or antibody detection system. So we have observed that antigen detection systems are compatible with point of care setting, but it needs a certain threshold virus load for it to work in. So we focused on the fact that we make the nucleic acid test method amenable to the point of care setting. So with that aim, we basically, with our collaborators, we designed, our collaborators have developed a machine which rules out the need of PCR thermocycler, and which can be used at anywhere with a minimum electricity requirement. And we have used a lamp based method, which is isothermal amplification, and we fused it with DNA hybridization system, so that it can actually directly taking swab from the patient sample into PBS, which is dipped into PBS, and it is immediately allocated to the kits for the amplification in terms of lamp, and the immediate results are seen after 45 minutes.
And can you describe a little bit, I guess, what this past year and a half has been like for you? So it's been an unusual time to obviously be a virologist, someone who knows something about viruses, where suddenly or a lot of other people sort of suddenly know what we do. So what's it been like for you?
So when I joined PhD, there have been a couple of people who didn't know what viruses are all about. So they used to ask, "Hey, what do you do?" So I, I actually had to explain them a lot. And people who don't know a lot of biology, they had no idea what viruses are about. So I oftentimes I say my friends that now I don't need to tell anyone what viruses are about. So that's a big change that have occurred. And as I have understood how a pandemic look like, and how devastating it can be, people losing their loved ones, and people suffering a lot from this gives me motivation that there is still a lot to do. So I feel privileged to be a virologist at the moment. And yeah, the last year have made me realize one thing very well, that I would not like to change my area of research.
Right. And so you're sort of like a senior graduate student. What are your plans for the future? Are you going to still try and stay in academics, or are you interested in sort of a career in biotechnology? What are your thoughts?
So at this point, I feel I will be more interested in academia, but my goal is to investigate things. And I think in academia, if I get a proper chance to investigate whatever I want to investigate, and I get proper scope to do that, I would like to be there.
Can you just tell us a little bit about sort of, I guess, what this last year in terms of the COVID pandemic, how has it affected you sort of as an individual?
So I would say it has taught me a lot, because suddenly pandemic came, and we were there to decide how to deal with it. We were very few of the students who stayed back in the campus, and the whole campus was empty. For the first time, I stayed without my friends. And yeah, it was, I understood how to be in a place where not much human beings are around. So that has been a completely new experience to learn. And yeah, there was in terms of family, there was a fear that we won't be able to travel back, because of the restrictions, interstate restrictions and all. So it was there in the back of the mind that if we stay here, we are not going to get a chance to get back to home for we don't know for how long. So that was there. But yeah, I think staying here and doing something has taught a lot.
And can you talk a little bit about how India is doing? Obviously, here in the United States, we're not doing so great right now. We have like a massive Delta outbreak. So, but India at least sort of went through a Delta outbreak. What is it like there now?
So I would say now, as I feel, it is very much stabilized. Of course, pandemic is still on. So in our place, schools are not that open. There are a couple of, like, it's half restricted, half opened up, and people are able to get back to their sort of okay kind of normal life. And people are getting infected, of course, but I would say it's kind of very much stabilized. People are taking care of them. At the same time, they are doing important stuff. And I would say we have achieved a lot in terms of vaccination, so that is helping. So vaccination rate is really fast, so I think that is helping a lot.
And can you talk a little bit about that? So since you actually were working on sort of a detection test and then versus vaccination, can you kind of talk about how India is sort of handling the various, I don't know, mitigation measures, as it were, to try and get the rates of infection lower?
Regarding vaccination, what I have seen, I can say that it's the healthcare workers are really working hard. And yeah, all the possible measures are taken care of to meet the maximum possible vaccination requirement. And the strategies are changing, the rules are changing each and every day, and making it flexible for those people who are not literate enough, who can't register themselves for vaccination. So for them, on slot vaccination is on, where you just come in, you don't have to pre-register, and on spot you will be registered by the healthcare workers, and you will be vaccinated.
I don't know, in India, are they offering vaccination to younger people like yourself, or is it still sort of older groups of people?
18 plus, yeah.
And what is the vaccine that you're taking?
So generally, two vaccines are administered here. One is Covaxin and the Covishield.
So thanks for talking with us today. It was great meeting you, and good luck with your thesis.
It was great meeting you too.
This has been Let's Meet the Virologist, a podcast about the people who study viruses. This is your host, Larissa Thackeray, and thanks for listening. You can find us on Google, Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, and other podcast providers, or at lmtv.podbean.com.